Welcome to Beyond the Page, the official podcast of Choice, the magazine of professional coaching, where we bring you amazing insights and in-depth features you just won't find anywhere else. I'm your host, Garry Schleifer, and I'm excited to expand your learning as we dive into this latest article, have a chat with this brilliant author over here, and uncover the learnings that are transforming the coaching world. When you have a chance, join our vibrant community of coaching professionals as we explore groundbreaking ideas, share expert tips and techniques, and make a real difference in our clients' lives. This is your go-to resource for all things coaching. But in the meantime, let's dive into our podcast. In today's episode, I'm speaking with executive and leadership coach Jenna Stoliker, who's the author of an article in our latest issue, Trust. Why is it intrinsic to coaching? Her article is entitled Trust as a Living Competency, the Inner and Interpersonal Practices that Deepen Coaching Impact. A little bit about Jenna. She is a PCC, as am I. Welcome to the club. And as I mentioned, an executive and leadership coach. She has more than 30 years of experience in leadership development and 19 years as a professional coach. She helps leaders cultivate trust-centered cultures where people and organizations can truly thrive. As founder for the Center of Conscious Leadership and the steward of the Trust Within assessments, Jenna weaves evidence-based practices with soulful, human-centered wisdom. Her work is rooted in the belief that trust is both a daily practice and a sacred responsibility, one that begins within. She is passionate about helping others lead with integrity, presence, and deep inner alignment. Wow, thank you so much for joining me today, Jenna.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Garry, for having me, and what a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You sound great.
Wow. Why you sound old.
Uh, well, if
All
you
those
are,
years
then
of
so am I.
experience.
I'm coaching for 24 and a half years and Choice for 23. So we're in the same generation. How's that?
We are, yes. And I was aware of as soon as I said that old, I'm like, "Oh, it's the languaging and the nuance of the words. We are wise. Maybe we're wise. We
Wise,
have some wisdom.
mature, some would say.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess it's no surprise that you decided to write an article for us with all the background, but what really drove
Yeah.
you to jump up and say, I'm in?
Well, one, I've been hearing a lot about trust more recently, like in the last few years, where it seems like people are gravitating towards understanding what is it and how are we forming relationships. And because of the work that I do, one, it's nice to hear that it's becoming much more of a public conversation or is much more in people's awareness for that. And then when I saw that this issue was going to be all around trust, I thought, well, goodness, one, I'm so curious to know, who else was writing on that and what the topics were and the angles were coming from it. And I thought there might just be something I could contribute to the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's what really piqued my interest. And I thought, why not
Yeah.
add to the conversation?
And you did quite
Yeah.
well, thank you. And I was rereading it tomorrow this morning, and our art director added a living image of water lilies, and I just couldn't help but think a living competency, as in nature, right? That nature and that sort of thing. And also, when I read your bio, when I read that you see it as a daily practice, how did you say it? Um, that trust is both a daily practice and a sacred responsibility. Well said. Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Well, I do see it as that, right? Because I think if we start with trusting ourselves, which also then extends to how we trust each other and have relationships built on trust. And it's really hard to have a relationship if there isn't some sort of, well, one, psychological safety so that you can be
Right.
open and give feedback and whatnot. Um, but if you don't have that trust, you don't have much of a relationship. And
Mm,
so
yeah.
that's kind
No.
of, how I'm viewing it. And it's always evolving. Like relationships are not stagnant and neither should we be, and neither should how we form trust with ourselves.
Well, I'm guessing that that's why you decided to describe it as a living competency.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how has that evolved over your coaching career?
Yeah. Interesting. It's because it is growing. And when you ask me that now, I'm like, how has it truly evolved?
Yeah.
Um, I will say this, without me fully realizing it in the moment, many years ago. I would say even probably back into my childhood, um, is probably where it started. It started growing. That seed was planted by just watching the adults in my life around the dinner table or in conversation.
Hmm.
And then thinking, when you go into school, you're meeting all new kids, and how do you form new friendships and all of that. I thought it's really fascinating how some people just naturally enter into relationship, and
Hmm.
they seem really open, and just you feel really comfortable with them. And I've also noticed other people who seem to hold back a little bit, almost like a wait and see attitude.
Right.
Right. And so like I noticed that early on in my life, and then I kind of just held on to that for a bit and thinking, okay, that's just because people are different, because they are. But then I started to see how the dynamics really played out in the workplace.
Right.
And so I think as how it evolved for me in my career and in coaching was realizing just how our preferences for how we want to communicate, how we prefer to engage first has such an impact on how that trust is built. And so over the years, that's really what got me thinking about relationships form in a certain way. And in some ways, there's a little bit of a formula to that, but everyone has a slightly different formula.
Mm.
And why, how is it that it works? And what happens when it doesn't work? And can you rebuild it? And that's what really drew me into this whole body of work of researching trust
Yeah.
and what happens. How do we build it? How does this impact leadership? How does this impact our teams? What does this mean in the workplace for how effective we are? And it's kind of always evolving. And I'm even now starting to look at it a little differently too, which is still almost like it's new to me. So I haven't full on articulated exactly what is new, but I can feel something still evolving.
Wow, I can't wait to hear about that when it finally settles in and you can have words for it. I'm curious. You sound like someone who trust, unobserved trust came natural to you.
Oh,
Would you say
oh,
that's
did
true?
it? Um,
I'll, I'll,
this is,
I'll, I'll
let me,
just, yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah, does it come natural
Did it?
or
Like,
did it?
because you've done a lot of research, so and I'm saying this for myself as well, so that's why
Yeah.
this is like I noticed that early on, I didn't know it, but I can gather trust really quickly.
Hmm.
And doing this issue, I realized that I can do more and that it's a practice and that I can now name the things that had the trust develop early on in my coaching relationships.
Yes. Yeah, I will have to agree with that for sure. It does come, I guess it does come naturally. I think that's probably what also drew me to this particular like body of work to understand how trust is developed. It's because at some level, like we all have certain things that are so natural to us. It's this like unconscious competence,
Yeah, right.
right? And then at some point you realize, oh wait, not everybody does it that way, or it's not like that. And
Right.
so you're like, well, now how would I describe that? How would I help somebody else through that? And what I've okay, so this is in hindsight,
Mhm.
having a really healthy foundation of love, of acceptance does support um being able to build trust. Now, we can always as adults, right? We make our own choices and we choose to do with like what is in front of us and make certain choices of how we want to engage with each other. And just because our backgrounds might be different or our upbringings might be different, and not everyone feels like they had a great steady foundation from the get-go, doesn't mean that you can't build trust.
Right.
But I would say back to your question of, I think I was really fortunate in that I can see parts of um, early on
Mhm.
what really aided in developing my ability to lean into trust, to form trust, and where that came probably more easily
Right.
for me than maybe for other people.
You make me wonder, and I don't know if any of your research, if you heard of any research that coaches have an innate um, skill with trust? Like, is it one of those, if you put a bunch of people in a room and you tested them on trust, they're more likely to be coaches or they'll be better suited to
Really?
be coaches? I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
because I am talking to you and I'm thinking, well, maybe I was the only one. And you're saying, well, same for you. So is
Mhm.
it something that we came to the table with and developed through coach training? Did we already have it and coach training embellished it? It's just a curious concept.
I, well, I'm actually even more curious now that you bring it up because I think that's where I've been thinking about the research that we've done around like so how does trust get built? What's needed to maintain trust? And then now looking at it through the lens of as coaches, and if you look at like different fields that people get drawn to, there's usually, and I'm going to generalize, right? But there's some characteristics like if um when I look at like the field of finance or accounting, people who seem to really feel most comfortable in that environment all tend to share similar characteristics. All
Right.
right. They really kind of gravitate towards the numbers. The numbers don't lie. There's a formula for it. I don't have to second guess some of that stuff. Um, I think maybe it's quite possible for many coaches or the coaching community is that as coaches, we naturally gravitate towards accepting people for who they are.
Uh,
We talk so much about like meet your client where they're at,
yeah.
and I think oftentimes that's probably fairly easy in some ways for many of us coaches to do that. Um, how we listen, how we be able to provide that, I will say provide feedback in a way, and this all depends on like what kind of coaching you're doing, but being able to be receptive to feedback and then delivering feedback in a way that's objective and it's in service to the person and not just for yourself. I think that may just be some natural tendencies that we as coaches have. Hence, we gravitate towards this profession.
Yeah. Interesting. You touched on a few things that have me go, oh, that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
when you first start coach training, consider like you said, your client is naturally, what back in the day it was naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. I think we've
Yeah.
improved a bit now, and that we meet the client where they're at. So
Yeah.
right away, you're not demanded to trust them, but you have a playing field that says, okay, let's just trust your client is okay.
Yes.
They're at, who they are, what's going on for them. And of course, we
Right.
always have the guardrails, like, if we have some sense of this, some other modalities might need to be at play, or
Right.
that sort of thing. So, yeah, so
Yeah.
we're tossed out into the field already having the trust framework.
Yes, in many ways, right? Where it's the invitation to say, hey, look, you don't, I mean, there's probably so many other positions, careers, fields where you have to make incredibly quick decisions.
Hmm.
It can be very life altering if you don't. And so there is a level of decision making and judgment calls that have to be made. And in coaching, we're saying you don't have to do all that. Like just
Hmm.
be with in this moment and let's just see where this conversation goes.
Yeah.
Let's see where your client wants to go and really being fully present with them. And so in by saying that, what we've in essence said is, hey, drop any judgments you have. Like it's okay. You don't have to you don't have to judge.
Yeah. Well, and we like to say you're the client's in a judgment-free zone. We're human,
Exactly.
of course. We always have to, in order to be present, we have to keep pulling back and checking and make sure we're not judging. But, we have our own
Right.
work. Well, speaking of own work, we're talking a lot about the trust of a client and others. What about
Mhm.
what coaches how can they cultivate deeper self-trust and come to the field
Right.
play?
Yeah. Well, and so that's probably one of the newer things that newer, like in the last 3 to 5 years, I started delving into because I started this work looking at like, well, other relationships and it had this come almost like this outward look. Like, well, how do I do this with somebody else? And then I realized, well, if we want to have trusting relationships and I need to show up fully, I need to show up with a level of acceptance and non-judgment. I can only do that if I am accepting and non-judging of myself,
Very true.
right? And so that's what got me thinking, how do we want to cultivate this in ourselves? So back to your question, like how can we as coaches start doing
Yeah.
this for ourselves? Um, we've kind of alluded to this and maybe mentioned this a few times already, is around just love
Mm.
and non-judgment. So where might you be finding that love for yourself and acknowledgement that you are whole, you are resourceful, and how do you support yourself in that? Like, what is your self-talk through all of that? I think that's probably one of the first steps I would
Yeah.
point to or invite people who are especially coaches.
Yeah.
Where are you supporting yourself?
Thank you. And you reminded me. So, for those that are listening or watching, perhaps you have a reflective journal. Those are great questions to sit and ponder over a cup of tea or coffee in the morning or whenever you do.
Yeah.
Also, a reminder that in your article, thank you, you put a reflective in inventory, and there's some questions in there as well that for people to
Yeah.
ponder. Practicing trust
Yes.
from the inside out. So some more references in there. Um, we also mentioned off and on, and you mentioned the article, the nuance of trust is grounded in core values. Now,
Yes.
you also have this thing called the trust within framework,
Mhm.
which helps coaches turn these insights into daily practice. And you mentioned in the article. Tell us more about that.
Okay. Uh, I'll start with the general framework
Thank you.
and then we'll
Then
talk
we'll
about the
spread from there.
values.
I
Let me start
trust
from there,
you. I
right?
trust
Okay.
you're going down the right
Oh, thank you, Gary.
path.
So the general framework is that we initially started looking at trust. And I say we, because this has really been, it's not just me. This is, we have decades of research. And so it's really started back nearly 50 years ago
Wow.
when, yeah, when Dr. Ralph Colby was a licensed psychologist. He was also a minister, and he was really curious about behavior, um, in particular, relationships and where trust is formed or how it might break down. And then my mentor, Keith Ayers, joined Dr. Colby a few years into his research and his looking at like how are these behaviors formed, and of course they looked at it within the workplace. So the two of them really started to form this particular model, and then Keith even expanded it further. And I've now taken the mantle, and we're carrying forward that
Wow.
research. So we start by looking at those behaviors. And I say we start there is because oftentimes when we're thinking about the relationships that we're forming, we're looking at the outward stuff that we see. And I oftentimes I use like this whole like iceberg, model or image, right? Like the
Yeah.
behaviors are that tip of the iceberg, it's above the surface, we all see it. Great. Okay, so we can see it. Within the trust within model, we're looking at four core behaviors, and it's acceptance, openness, congruence, and reliability. What we have found with just those behaviors, if we wanted to, four is a fairly easy number to remember, but if I want to break it down even more, we're looking at pretty much how we communicate and how we do so consistently, or how our actions are consistent. Those two things, when paired together, is what helps us begin to form trust and maintain it. So above the surface are those behaviors. Great. That explains some of the things that we might see in other people. And we might be able to see it in ourselves too. But what drives our behaviors? We've got our thoughts, our needs, our beliefs, our values. And our values really become the manifestation of many of our behaviors. So think of it in terms of maybe it's the beliefs that have been formed from our families, childhood, the groups that we belong to start to shape who we are. Right. And so as we look at those values, what we were curious about is if we've identified there are these four core behaviors, and certainly there are other behaviors that can form trust, but really trying to just distill it as like, if I could bottom line it,
Yeah.
what would be the four key things I'm looking for? Got those, but what's driving those behaviors? And after looking at like a whole series of values, that's where we identified two main values for each behavior.
Okay.
So, so with acceptance comes the value that you hold is around respect and recognition. Now, when I bring this into the workplace, oftentimes that word recognition, people are thinking like, oh, the rewards,
Mhm.
we've got a recognition program. Like, that's just a part of it. What we're really talking about is acknowledgement. Like, I respect you for who you are. I recognize that you have value. You have your own set of wisdom that you're bringing to this conversation, to the relationship. That's acceptance. For openness, we're looking at disclosure and receptivity, meaning how basically like, how am I being able to, or how able am I to like share information,
Right.
right? Not just hoard it, not just like, and this is so in the realm of coaching, it's also around how am I managing my emotions? How am I naming my emotions? How am I noticing maybe even emotions in other people, especially even like my clients? And how am I eliciting feedback? Am I open to receiving feedback?
Mm,
'Cause I don't know about you, but I've run into some people who are wonderful at providing feedback,
Right.
uh, but they struggle receiving it, right? So that openness goes both ways.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Think
Yeah.
about it, right? When we get to congruence, we're looking at honesty and straightforwardness. So do I hold this value like, what I say is what I'm going to do? I'm just going to be very forthright with it. Now, certainly you can deliver feedback in a way that is straightforward, that sometimes can be very edgy and sometimes doesn't always land well. So what we're looking at with
I'm laughing
straightforward.
because that's me.
Well, and sometimes this is just merely style and preference.
Right.
But just to know that when we say straightforward, it doesn't mean it's carte blanche just to be like, hey, a thought was in my head and bam, it came out of my
Yeah, it came
lips.
out, you're getting it. No
Right?
filters.
So, what we are looking at, so how do you not hold back? Where in are your values in that you say, well, I might finesse my message a little bit, but I still need to deliver this. And I'm doing this again in service to this relationship and service to my client.
Yeah.
So I've covered acceptance, openness, and congruence. Reliability is about the holding on to these values around keeping commitments and always striving for excellence. And I really see that, especially like in coaching. There's something I learned early on. It was like, are you living in excellence? Right? Like if I'm coaching people around living their best life or being the best leader they can be, I need to look inward.
Right.
How am I striving for that? How am I setting myself up to live in excellence in that way? So those are the values that support those behaviors within our framework
Yeah.
and how we're
That
looking at it.
last one, the word integrity came up for me.
Yeah, it
Well,
is.
actually, in a few, honesty and straightforwardness is integrity and disclosure. I guess, yeah, I guess, never mind. It's just there everywhere.
Yeah, it is. It does. It gets woven throughout the entire model,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and thank you for matching each of these nuances with the core competencies from the International Coaching Federation. I really like that. I'm working on AI Coach Garry, and I'm measuring it against the PCC markers. So I'm like really getting to know these babies a little bit too close, way more than I did before. It's a big exercise, and oh. I don't know why this came up, but I thought I'd just say it. There's trust on websites. And so I
Oh,
took somebody's article and I said, "Hey, ChatGPT, here's the copy for my website. Here's the article about trust in business. Tell me where I'm meeting or need to change the text." And it gave me some different concepts to
yes.
consider as I was doing that. So it would increase the trust level between me and my clients that I don't
Right.
know yet, right? So,
Right.
it's in
Right.
inviting them in and having them feel
Yeah.
comfortable without me being there. So just I
Right.
don't know why that came up, but
Oops.
you know, um,
Yeah.
I want to point out, there was a quote in, I want to quote something that you said in here.
Okay.
And I know you believe this because you said it so many times. It's in your bio even.
Yeah.
Trust is curated daily through intention, awareness, and alignment with values. It is the
Mhm.
sacred container in which transformation occurs. And because it's both relational and behavioral, it's something we can reflect on, grow in, and embody more fully.
Yeah.
Well said. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
And thank you again for the article and this conversation. And I'm just wondering, what would you like our audience to do as a result of all of this wisdom?
Oh my goodness. I would say, well, one, I really would encourage them to take a look at the article and in particular, the self-reflection questions. I think it's so important for us as coaches that we're always evolving and to be even, always like kind of working on our own awareness and
Right.
deepening our wisdom. Those are just some sample questions. Maybe it's questions they've already been looking at or journaling about. But sometimes what I have found is I learned many years ago, like you learn from many different masters or you learn from many different teachers. And so
Right.
sometimes the way something is worded, same stuff worded differently can really open doors. The other thing I would offer is if they're interested in the trust within model, uh, check out my website, check out any of the blog posts. Uh, I've actually just relaunched and done a little bit of rebranding this year.
Hmm.
The so you could go to jennastoliker.com, just find out me about me as a coach. But if you're interested in particular more about like trust and the trust within, I would just point people to consciousleadershipalliance.com. And that's the home base for all of this background on trust, the behaviors, our values, the research we've done. I have some of our research. I've got the psychometric reports from the surveys that we use to support teams and leaders in developing
Right.
trust. Go check it out.
All
See
that
if it
years of
interests them.
research and more to come. So
Yes,
jennastoliker.com and consciousleadershipalliance.com, correct?
correct.
And I'm
Correct.
sure we could reach you on LinkedIn if we really wanted to get on
Oh,
one-on-one.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Always, yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there fairly regularly.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I'm not so much. So just letting our listeners know, I'm in there maybe once a week. So email's best. And it's
Yes.
easy to reach me, I know, because
Yeah.
a lot of people do. And I really appreciate listening,
Yeah.
talking to them. Thank you again, Jenna. It's been a great
Mhm.
conversation. We could go on, obviously. And
Yes.
we've learned so much today as a result of your
Absolutely.
article and the conversation. I have. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Page. For more episodes, subscribe via your favorite podcast app, most likely the one that got you here. If you're not a subscriber to Choice Magazine and you're watching this video, you can sign up for your free digital issue by scanning the QR code in the top right-hand corner of our screen. Or if you're listening only, go to choice-online.com and click the Sign Up Now button. I'm Garry Schleifer. Enjoy the journey of mastery.